breckland, fens and beaches, rivers and rich countryside, fresh winds and broadland reaches with sky and landscape stretching wide. Explore the features. You will find more curious histories behind. For long ages, when the mountains of Wales and Scotland were already rounded and stooped with age, East Anglia slept on the seabed. And the sea tulips flowered, and the centuries turned, and the first signs of life drifted in the waters above. Then one day, the land rose slowly to the surface, crawled out of the waves, and sprawled itself out at the edge of high tide. And out of every pore, along wrinkles and runnels, the water still streams back to its mother, the sea. The flattest part of this land lies round the Wash, the place of the Fens. Here, on top of layers of chalk and clay, came centuries of fine silt, the ages of marsh and swamp, the layers of dead wood and decayed leaves. All these to make this rich black soil, these fenlands, where the labor of man could produce the full grain, the plump root, the sweet-tasting flesh. Where the skill of man might flower in the fields and the earth yield its delicate bloom. The people in this land had no mountains, so they built their own hills to make a foothold for their minds, an Everest to climb into the vault of heaven. They built one in Cambridgeshire, on an island surrounded by marsh, where eels swam and birds nested in the reeds. And they called their mountain Ely. It was here, before this mountain was conceived, that Hereward the Wake made his last stand against the Normans. Hereward is still remembered, but the cathedral has seen the marshes drained and the rich crops reach the horizon. But all the earth isn't fen. All the land isn't flat. In the days of the great ice, when glaciers crept down into this land, their melted streams laid down an area of sand and gravel, of soil as thin as a cloud of dust. South of the Wash, this breckland lies between Bury St. Edmunds and Swaffham, a place where the trains bringing visitors to Norfolk pass through wild heath and newly planted forest. The soil beneath this scenery holds black iron-hard flints. With these flints, the first men in this land made weapons to kill the food they hunted by land and by water. These flints, that built the breckland churches, had once been sponges swaying on the seabed. In places like King's Lynn on the Wash, they flowered again in the neat flushwork patterns of the Guildhall.
Well, that's a rum one, that is. That's the first time I heard tell that Guildhall was made of sponges. But Lynn's daft to know for anything. And old to know, too. They do say 'twere a port when that little old Norman William was a-splashing about arter Hereward the Wake. But most of they houses was rebuilt as recent as when old George III was a-trotting round the bend. Of course, there's Lynn's old customs house, too. But that don't prove nothing. Boy, that ain't hardly got his second coat of paint on. That's only 270 years old. But Lynn's outlasted some other ports hereabouts. Blakeney, now, that was a port too, till the almighty builder, he started dumping sand in the harbour mouth, so that ain't only used for titty-totty sailing boats nowadays. Almost anywheres on this coast, from the Wash right round to Southwold, down in Suffolk, you only got to look sideways, and round the corner there's a stretch of beach, and that old wind a-blowing, clean as a flute. Ah, but that's all a-going to waste for. Times in summer, you have to shout across 10 mile of sand to find out if that's time for tea. Of course, places like Yarmouth and Lowestoft, there's nearly as many folks flacketing about as if that was harvest home. Ah, that's the place for market days, for. That's like market day every day, and fair day all the summer. That's nearly as exciting as when the old Vikings came a-strolling into Norfolk, giving folk a ding on the lug with their old axes.
In Yarmouth and Lowestoft, there's always a great deal of salt in the air. It comes in with the wind and the tide. It comes in with the drifters and hovers over the harbour as they spill their haul of herrings out on the quayside. There was an old herring got caught in a trawl, High Rickety Barlow. Though he'd never done any harm at all, High Rickety Barlow. He swam like silver, but wasn't able to keep off the plate on the family table. Oh, when you fillet your kipper for tea, remember the herring that swam in the sea. Remember the herring that swam in the sea.
That's one thing the sailor don't think about, boy. Couldn't fill his nets, nor nobody else's belly neither. Whether he go out on drifters for herring or mackerel, or in his own tiddly concern for souls aplace, that's good fat fish he pray for. Keep the sky above the land. Keep the land below. Keep the sea above the sand, and make the water flow. Blow the wind to fill my sail. Keep the water wet. Give the fish good fin and tail to swim into my net. Scale him with a silver skin. Make him fat and fine. Then let me, Lord, haul him in. That make his silver mine.
Just south of Lowestoft, the solitary Suffolk fisherman returns to a coast lined with sandbanks and bars, pooled and ponded with salt marshes, licked by the sea's long tongue. He returns to villages and towns as quiet as the Hill of Peace. But Blytheborough Church has heard wives praying for their men at sea, and the light at Southwold puts warning fingers into the bedrooms of dreaming children. There are no rocks off this coast, so the lighthouses have found their foothold on the shore. A little farther south, at Orford, the light stands on the Ness. But to guide them over the whiting sandbank, sailors returning from Holland still use the parish church and Henry II's black-browed keep. This land has trembled under wave after breaking wave of invaders. Britons, Angles, Saxons, Danes. So when at last the Normans came, they set themselves behind walls 20 foot thick to watch this vulnerable coastline. The castle still broods over the little town. It listens to the battles on the playing fields and looks west towards inland villages soused in tradition, held in the hollows and folds of this gentle county. Places like Kersey, where the road still waddles through the pond, just as when the creak and thump of the loom could be heard from every one of these houses.
That's old Edward III brought that weaving game from Belgium. Hey, you Flemishers, he say, you bring your weaving to my land. Do, I'll give you fat beef and mutton, all you want. So they all come and has a meal of fat beef and mutton. And pretty soon, places as far as Framlingham, they're a-making Kersey cloth for, as well as Lindsay and Worcester. And that's how places like Lavenham come to have cloth merchants building such great old churches, just to show how rich they were. My heart, they did some building in them days. Not only churches, but all manner of wool halls and guild halls, all carved and titulated up. That's work you don't see nowadays, boy. Of course, all that weaving's gone from these parts, but there's still a few crafty people going round. Why, over at Ringsfield, there's a little old church still has its thatching done every now and again.
No one should go from Suffolk before seeing Flatford. Men have owned houses, have died and been forgotten. But Constable painted Flatford Mill and made it his own for as long as paint sticks to canvas.
He went along and painted Horsted Mill too. And that water still flowed just the same as when he done it. In fact, he painted a whole lot of places hereabouts. He was daft as a brush about painting pictures. When he was just a little titty-totty boy, fishing and boating in the River Stour, he must have been a-thinking of all them pictures. And you can see 'em all round these parts, along with a lot more he never had time to paint.
South Suffolk is veined and netted with rivers, bobbing with canoes and small boats. But northward once more, in Norfolk, the East Anglian sky arches over the sailing country of the Broads to centre on the spire of Norwich Cathedral. The city beneath this spire is as old as the Kingdom of England and as new as this year's fashion. For Norwich carries its old age of flint with dignity in the elaborate patterns of the Guildhall. It preserves its charms in the old houses and traditional crafts of streets like Elm Hill. And it is unafraid to express its vitality in the new look of the Civic Hall. In its castle, it embodies the strength and violence of man. And it celebrates the quality of his spirit in St. Peter Mancroft, church of churches, rivaling the cathedral itself. Norwich is a town that sits on the church steps and listens to the sounds of the marketplace. For while it walks with a state of grace and beauty on one side, On the other, it keeps pace with the gargantuan gait of the world of commerce that brings her gifts to market for the satisfaction of men.
If you want what that old commerce has got, you gotta pay. And that's the truth, boy. 'Cause there ain't never been something for nothing, nor it ain't likely there ever will be. That old cathedral tell you that. And her making, like for any good baby, they spent sweat as well as sweet singing. That's what make her go through all them hundreds of years. And she still sing the best song of any in they old Broads.
With a white note clamped to the deck and a song of the sun in their shrouds, the boats go like old violins, playing their tunes to the clouds. Like a train of songs for a bride, like the flight of notes on a stream, the boats go like old violins, trailing their tunes on the beam. With the break of the wave on their bows and the beat of the sun on their boards, the boats go like old violins, playing old songs of the Broads. Centuries have passed over this land. Soft sponges, clutched in the white chalk, have slowly turned to flint and found their way into the hard core of history. Let Castle Acre stand for all that age. The land still feeds her people. She has ministered to the needs of their minds. She has soothed the beat of their hearts. And her spirit still blows, clean as a flute, through the lives of those who come to her for refreshment.